recap. So we were speaking about the soul and its yearnings and the different levels, the four expressions of yearning. The highest being what we just spoke about, klot nefesh, where the soul so yearns for God, so yearns to return to its source, as we said, that it leaves the body, almost like, and we gave the example of the Jews on Mount Sinai, when God uttered the first two commandments. By hearing that voice of God, our souls left our bodies, expired, so to speak, like a piece of fire would expire when it joins the big ball of fire. That was the analogy we used. And let's continue. So speaking about that yearning of the soul, and that yearning of the soul, I will say, and we emphasize that also, that yearning of the soul that happens specifically because of the body. You know, the soul up there doesn't yearn as much in heaven, I'm saying, it doesn't yearn as much as it earns here on earth. Here on earth, when faced with the body and when faced with its opposite, because the body wants earthly desires, materialistic desires. You know, the body wants to sleep, the body wants a good massage, the body wants good food. The soul doesn't care about any of this. When it's faced when it faces its opposite, and when it's forced to do things that it really does not want to do, then it yearns even more for the heavens. Then it yearns even more for God, because its yearnings are yearnings that are spiritual, not at all materialistic. And it's almost like, you know, when we face our polar opposites, when we meet our polar opposites, it makes us appreciate who we are maybe more. When you put two opposites together, then the differences of each all of a sudden come out. And this is what happens here to the soul. When it faces its opposite and realizes who it is and what its yearnings are. And therefore the yearnings are multiplied or amplified many times more. In any case, let's continue on. Speaking of the yearning of the soul. So just to remind everyone, if you have the book, Opening the Tanya, so it's on page 114, in the middle of the page, this book right here. Okay, Diana, go for it. Or anyone else, whoever.
You had your hand up. Or maybe you didn't know you had your hand up.
Who?
I saw her hand go up. So
okay, fine. So,
I thought maybe she wanted to read. I didn't want to.
I'll read.
Fine. Excellent. So middle of the page of 114. My soul longs and goes out. Go for it.
Okay. My soul longs and goes out. My soul thirsts for God. My soul thirsts for you. These three verses correspond to the three aspects of the contemplation of the divine greatness mentioned earlier. How he fills all worlds and encompasses all worlds, and how all is not before him, which transcends his immanence as well as his transcendence.
Right. Just read one more paragraph. Continue.
Okay. This thirst is derived from the element of fire in the godly soul. As the students of natural science write, and so it is in Eitz Hayim, the element of fire is in the heart, whilst the source of the element of water and moisture is in the brain, which is explained in Eitz Hayim, Portal 50, to refer to the fact of Chokhmah, which is called the water of the godly soul.
Go ahead. Those were the words of the Tanya, now Rabbi Stein's commentary, and then I want to delve into this. Go ahead.
Got it. Okay, there is a distinction between two aspects in the soul, one of fire and one of water, which are author bases on the theories of the natural scientists of ancient times and on the Kabbalistic work Eitz Hayim that extends the concepts. Fire represents the upward movement, ecstasy and emotional arousal in general, and in the godly soul, the soul's thirst and desire to rise above its material embodiment and merge with the divine. Water is the soul's intellectual element. Like water, the intellect is cold and damp, as opposed to the hot and dry nature of the heart. Water moves downward, always descending to the lowest possible point in a terrain. This is also the directional flow of Chokhmah, which descends from the supernatural height, supernatural heights to all points of existence.
Right. So, okay. So,
supernal?
Yeah, supernal heights. Yeah, to all points of existence. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
When they talk about before, I don't want to interrupt you in the middle of your
No, no problem. Please. Yeah, of course. I encourage questions. Yes.
When I see Amy reading, and I know Amy's love of music, and when I see, I'm pointing at her face, but I can't remember her name. The one that does the yoga, or things that
Amy.
start. Amy again, right? Okay, that's why I'm confused. I'm sorry. I'm even see Jordan joining us, or people who are doing things that go deeper into their selves. I don't know, the music, the yoga, aren't they at that point when they're doing that closer to their soul?
Oh, yeah.
Aren't they at that point?
As they're performing.
Are they closer to their soul? Sure, absolutely. Okay. I think not only are they closer to their soul, they are that soul. They are allowing their soul to be. So it's not just being close to your soul, it's actually being your soul. It's being your soul itself. Right. So
you feel it when you're with them and you're doing what they are teaching you. You feel it when you're even not a musician or
absolutely.
Okay.
Right. So the question is this, and that's why he speaks of this, and that's where it can get tricky, because the soul is so abstract, and because the soul is such a spiritual experience. It's very hard to decipher exactly when it is the soul speaking and when it's maybe just our emotions speaking, just our bodily chemicals speaking. How do we know the difference? So here we have to go to the root of the soul, and this is why the Tanya does this. The root of the soul has two different, and again, two opposite sides to it. There's water and fire, he was speaking about. There's an aspect of the soul that is like fire because it just wishes to fly into this ecstasy. It's again, like we were speaking about last week, when you have this spiritual awakening and you feel like you want to pray and meditate and dance before God. It's almost like there's a story about King David in the Bible where the Ark of God was brought finally, if you're familiar with the story, but it was the Ark of God was brought finally to Jerusalem and was being redeemed and was brought to Jerusalem. It was a great cause of celebration. And King David went in front of the ark and almost naturally he started to dance. Mefazez umekarker, it says, to dance and to fly into this ecstasy in front of the ark, to the point that his wife, Michal, that was watching from afar, became embarrassed because he looked like a lunatic, just jumping up and down. But he was experiencing the fire of that soul, the fire of his soul, that just wishes to lose itself in God. There's a story about the author of the Tanya himself, that one day they found him praying, and he was on the floor rolling and rolling and rolling and shouting, God, I don't want your reward. I don't want your portion in the world to come. All I want is you alone. I don't want anything else. I just want to become one with you. Okay, that's fire. Then you have the portion, the side of the soul, that's the opposite of this. That's water. It's the side of the soul that says, okay, fine. I experience God, but you know I can, with my emotions, by lying on the floor with my fire side. But sometimes, you know, the soul tells you know where you can experience God the most? In this world, by bringing that heaven down to earth, by helping the needy, by going down to maybe to the lowest levels of this world and doing a mitzvah right there, by taking, for example, your money, which is very, very materialistic, and going to, I don't know, again, tzedakah is a good example of that. It's a materialistic mitzvah, and going to a poor man and giving it. There's no ecstasy in that. There's labor in that, in making that money, and then afterwards there's also facing parts of the world that remind us maybe of our challenges, of our bodily challenges. But that's water, and I think the righteous, the ultimate human being, know exactly when to play the fire side of their soul and when to play the water side of their soul. They know the exact balance, because indeed in life there is time for fire, and then there is no time for fire. There is time for water. There is time for bringing that heaven down to earth. And the evil inclination, dare I say, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi speaks about this a lot in some of his other books, in Likutei Torah, for example. But the evil inclination, our evil inclination knows how to play us very well, to play this game of the mind very well, when sometimes we're supposed to be praying and flying into ecstasy. And he says to us, no, 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 no. Maybe now it's time to go and do something earthly. Go plant a tree. Go look at the nature and see, I don't know, whatever it is. But he knows how to distract us from a fireside. And sometimes we're supposed to be doing a mitzvah. And by the way, that's when the evil inclination plays a role much more. Sometimes we're supposed to be in a watery state and going down to this world and facing the coldness of the world by doing mitzvahs in this world. And the evil inclination comes to us and says, no, no, go pray. Go and try and meditate. Go and ignite some fire of ecstasy in you. So again, these are two opposite sides, and the righteous know how to play the fire side, how to play the water side. And it's a constant exercise, I believe, because how would we know? I think our intuition tells us. I mean, there's two ways to know, really. Our intuition tells us, am I on the right side right now? If I'm on the fire side, is this the right side right now to be on? Or is this my evil inclination trying to push me to the right, to the fire side, so that I don't do a mitzvah? And again, when I'm the water side, you have to ask yourself, you have to ask your intuition, so to speak. Am I on the right side? Am I not on the right side? That's one way of knowing. Your intuition, I think you have to listen to your deepest you. And that deepest you will tell you if you're on the right side of the soul at this point. And the second way of knowing is very often what the evil inclination hates the most is mitzvahs, doing what is right, action. And very often it will tell you, oh, go and say a prayer and lock yourself up in your room and maybe say some psalms, Tehillim, while really you have to roll your sleeves and go and volunteer yourself, go and help yourself. But it's telling you to go to your fire side of your soul, when really you're supposed to be on your water side of your soul. And the other way, in other words, the other way of knowing, I'm trying to explain this, but the other way of knowing is that if it's preventing you from doing action, then you know that you're on the wrong side of your soul. If you're praying and you know that prayer is really divorcing you from that which you are supposed to do, and the emphasis is on do, then you know that you're on the wrong side of your soul. Even though praying is a very spiritual act, it's a very soulful act, but you're not supposed to be on that side of the soul. You're supposed to be on the other side. You know, the biblical example that comes to mind is Reuben. Reuben, who was the oldest of the children of Jacob, found himself with his brothers having lunch, and then they plotted to kill Joseph, if you remember that biblical scene. And they said, then they finally saw, so were having lunch and said, okay, we hate our brother, we're jealous of him, let's kill him. And then they found a pit next to them and they said, you know, we're going to throw him in this pit, and this pit is full of snakes and scorpions. We'll throw him in it and he'll die, and we'll get rid of him once and for all. They see Joseph coming close to them and they said, great, now we can exercise this plot. Reuven, who was the oldest and therefore had to be the most responsible, did not know what to do. He said to himself, you know what? Should I fight my brothers? Should I not fight? They're the majority. They might hate me for fighting them. So he tried to be diplomatic and said, you know what? He said to himself, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. They'll throw Joseph in the pit, and then I'll wait. They'll go back home. And when they'll leave, I'll go back to the pit and take Joseph out. Take Joseph out. Fine. That's the game plan he had in his mind. Joseph came. They kidnapped him. They grabbed him, threw him in the pit. Reuven said to his brothers, as an excuse that he wanted to separate himself for the group again. Now, his intentions were good. He wanted to separate himself from the group so that when they would finally leave, he wouldn't have to leave back with them. He would be separated already, and then he could go back to the pit and take Joseph out to save him. So he separates himself What did he go and do? The Midrash tells us that Joseph went to pray and to repent for sins of the past. So he goes, he's in the fields now all alone, praying and repenting for sins of the past, and waiting for his brothers to leave the scene so that he can go and take Joseph out of the pit. The brothers eventually leave. Reuven eventually comes back to the pit. He goes to the pit to try and save his brother, and his brother is not there. Where was his brother? They had taken him out of the pit and sold him to Egyptian slaves. Then he shouts to himself and he says, gosh, my brother isn't here. Va'ani ana aniba. What am I going to do with myself? My plan was to save him. But I don't know where he is. Maybe someone stole him. Maybe he didn't know the rest of the story. Maybe someone kidnapped him. Maybe he died. Maybe someone fed him to the lions. Who knows what? But in any case, we know the rest of the story. You know, while Reuven was praying and repenting, the brothers, yes, threw him in the pit. And then Judah was the one who said, you know what? There are Egyptian merchants here and let's sell him to slavery. And that's what they did. Reuven wasn't a part of all of this, again, because he was repenting and praying. Now, why am I telling you the story? Because you may say, one second, Reuven went to repent. He went to pray. Those are great deeds. Not only that, he had the intention of saving his brother afterwards. Wow, Reuven is a righteous man. But no, he's condemned by each and every single one of the commentaries here. Why? Because as they say, there is a time to pray and there is a time to act. You want to pray, you want to repent? Don't do that while your brother is in the pit dying. The Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination who told you now to connect to the fire of your soul, to go and pray and fly into ecstasy in the forest and ask for repentance, ask for forgiveness. That's not the time to do so. Now you had to act. Now you had to connect to the water side of your soul. You had to go and save your brother who was in a pit, who was dying with snakes and scorpions. So what if you have to fight your brothers? Go and fight your brothers. It's a time for action. You won't feel the same ecstasy that your soul feels when it's in the state of spiritual meditation, but it's not the time to connect to that side of the soul now. Now is the time to connect to your water side of the soul, to go and work and to go and do what you need to do. And very often we're put in the same situations, not as dramatically as Joseph and Reuben, but you know, sometimes we say to ourselves, okay, I'm gonna stay home, I'm gonna do good at home, I'm gonna connect to my loved ones. Maybe that's a state of spiritual satisfaction for the soul. While really, you have to go out and volunteer and do good. And I think it's true, you know, on the simplest of levels. Sometimes also going down to the level of someone that's not like us. That creates this resistance within, because you say to yourself, oh, I'm not going to be able to feel good with this person. Why? Because he's not like me. I feel like he's lower than me. So your soul is not going to be in that state again of fire, of, oh, good, I'm erupting upward. No, it's going downwards like water. You're going to a lower level. But that's what is expected of you, to go down to that low level of that person, of you think at least that it's a low level. By the way, that person might be on a higher level. Who says you're right? But you have to go down to that low level, to the water side of your soul, because that's what's demanded of you at that point. So it doesn't have to be like an earthly action where you are digging a well and you know, saving souls in Africa by walking for kilometers in mud. No, that's also the water side of your soul. But sometimes it's just going down to a person that you don't want to meet, that you don't want to make the phone call to, that you don't want to mend that relationship with, and you go down to that level. And you connect to the water side of your soul, because that's what's demanded of you, even though you would much rather prefer the fire side of your soul. And I think, I don't want to generalize, but I think it's true for all human beings. We generally prefer the fire side of our soul. It feels so much better to be in a state of ecstasy. When you're in nature, for example, and watching birds, beautiful birds, especially here in Arizona, fly, and you're hearing their chirp, and you're seeing the blossom of the spring, in cactuses and in eucalyptus trees, wherever it may be. And you feel God in every atom of nature. There you go, Jordan. And then you say to yourself, gosh, now I'm in a state of complete ecstasy. Wow, God, I want to sing and praise, sing to you and praise you. there you go. See, that's beautiful. That's great. But maybe that's not what you need to do right now. Maybe what you need to do is pick up that phone and call someone that will make you feel like water, much lower than that state of ecstasy, and mend that relationship, or share that good word, or cheer that person up. Maybe that's what you need to do. And being on the fire side of your soul is only the advice of your evil inclination. Again, now it's hard to know. How do you know on which side you're supposed to be? Again, I think there's two methods. One is your deepest intuition. You have to listen to yourself and ask yourself, really, what is right? Me being not right now in nature, in this state of ecstasy, is this right? Or maybe, God, I'm just doing this to avoid what I know I must do. So you have to listen to yourself. And number two, if this is taking you away from an action that is needed to be done now, like Reuven by the pit, who needed to be there then, not wait and repent and then say, I'm going to come back. But he needed to save his brother right there, then you know that you're doing the wrong thing. Now, I will say this, the story of Reuben came to mind because the Lubavitcher Rebbe would use it a lot, Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory. He was, as you all know, one of the pioneers of what we call outreach movement, even though he once said that he hates this word, outreach. There's no word outreach in Hebrew. Why? Because when you outreach, you're really in reaching. You're not reaching out. Your brothers and sisters are not out. They are part of your inward circle. So when you're thinking that you are outreaching, that you're reaching out to your brothers and sisters, to other Jews, or even to the world, we're all part of the same family. You're actually reaching in. So that word shouldn't really exist. And that's why it doesn't exist in the Hebrew language. Just think about it this way. But that's as a side note. But when he would encourage people and his emissaries to go across the world, to go and literally save souls, he would use that example of Joseph quite a lot. He would say, fine, yes, you think you're part of a previous generation where you could afford to lock yourself up in your shtetl and pray and study all day long. You're wrong. Tzav hasha'ah, as he called it in Hebrew, which means the call of the hour is to connect to our watery side of the soul, to go out or to go in better and attend to those people who are in a pit. It doesn't have to be a physical pit like Joseph of scorpions and snakes, but it's an emotional pit sometimes of scorpions and snakes. It's a psychological pit. It's a spiritual pit. There are all sorts of different pits. And yet you have so many Reubens, especially in the Orthodox Jewish world, dare I say, who say, you know what, we're going to close ourselves in our Borough Parks, in our Bnei Braks, in our Williamsburg, and connect only to the fire of the soul. And that's not right. The soul also has a water part of it, and it's also shouting for attention. And we're not giving it the attention that it desires, especially not that it only desires, that God desires. God wants us to go to those pits and save those people who are stuck in those pits. So to generalize this in general, I think it's true for our generation altogether. Yes, we want to connect to the fire side of our soul, but I think the tzav hasha'ah, again, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe would say, the call of the hour of this generation is much more to connect to the water side of the soul than the fire side of the soul. We must have fire moments, there's no doubt. But if we had to pick where we should invest most of our strengths and resources, then tzav hasha'ah, the call of the hour, I think is on the water side of the soul, on action, on bringing that water, that heaven down to earth, like water that flows down, going from year to year, and then elevate the year, elevate the lower part of this world. That's just my personal take, not mine, but based on the Lubavitcher Rebbe's take. But again, everyone should know based on their intuition and the call to action that they may have at that moment, what side of the soul they should be on. Does anyone want to share a comment or something? Yes, Diana, please.
I have two things that hit me as this is going on. I'm beginning to realize, to see something differently. Like if we're planting wheat,
Mm-hmm.
let's say to make bread, to make challah, whatever. Or if I have my orange trees out there and I'm going out every day and picking this and cleaning this and giving it water, and it's kind of like partnering with God when we're doing to grow the food that people can eat or to do this. And when you're doing it, I'm thinking I'm adding to the pile of music and yoga, I guess, with my gardening, and certainly Jordan would understand that. The
Right.
other thing that struck me is the word thirsts, and where we started out.
Right.
Isn't that an interesting word in the context of what you're saying?
Yeah, I love that word. You're right. And by the way, it's a word that's used very often in the prophets. Isaiah, I think, uses it maybe the most, relating to the soul, that the soul thirsts for God. King David also uses it quite a bit in the book of Psalms. Tzam'a lecha nafshi, he says in Psalm 61. My soul thirsts for you. Kama lecha b'sari, my flesh longs for you. But I think maybe in this context, I mean, there's many connotations to thirst, but in this context, I think it fits perfectly, because based on what we're speaking about, see, sometimes you know you're thirsty, right? Dr. Pello, you'll tell us, you'll confirm this medically, but sometimes you know you're thirsty, and sometimes you don't know you're thirsty, yet you're dehydrating, right? And same with the soul. Sometimes it feels that it's thirsty, and those are the signals of the souls that tell you, hey, pay attention to me. I'm suffocating here, and I'm causing all sorts of inner, depressions or whatever the diseases of the soul are. And sometimes the soul, you don't know that you're thirsty, yet your soul still needs attention, and you're dehydrating it. So I think thirst is an accurate, if it's true medically, right?
Yeah.
You have to drink even if you're not thirsty, they tell you.
Yep.
So,
gotta stay hydrated.
Right, you got to stay hydrated. Same with the soul. Sometimes it doesn't know that it's thirsty, and it still needs attention. Otherwise, you can dehydrate it too. But that's one side of it, and the other side of thirst in general, of using that verb for the soul, like King David does, Isaiah, and so many others do. I think is that thirst is something that reminds you of your most fundamental need. Without water, we can't survive, right? How long can we survive without water? 2 days? How much is it medically? Anyone knows? Whatever it is. What?
Couple days.
Couple of days. There you go. Unless you're a camel. And then if you drank quite a bit, you can survive 30 days in the desert, or maybe a little more. But again, it reminds us of a very fundamental need, of a fundamental need for existence. Now, same year, the soul is just as fundamental as that fundamental need that thirst reminds us of drinking water. And if we don't pay attention to our soul, it's a question of spiritual life and death. Just as, water and thirst is a question of physical life and death. That's how important it is to attend to our soul. And our soul will show its signs of desperation when it's not attended to. And again, I really believe, and I've spoken to, and I know we have a few here, but I've spoken to many professionals about this. I really believe that and psychologists will agree with me, psychiatrists will agree with me, that many of the diseases that are not necessarily physical diseases, again, like depression and like diseases of that sort, are really expressions of the soul saying, hello, pay attention to me. I've been suffocated. You haven't given me any type of say. And the more we ignore our souls, the more it will pain, the more it will cause all sorts of, again, spiritual diseases, emotional diseases, and the more we'll fall into this pit. Now, on the other hand, the good thing is that the soul is not that needy also. Just like, yes, thirst, we have to drink, but it's not like we have to drink 24/7 all day long. The soul will give us our breaks also. But I think that's the brilliance, for example, of praying 3 times a day. You check in with your soul 3 times a day. That's what prayer is. You say, hello, soul, I'm here. Let's connect to God. Let's do what we need to do. Let's remind ourselves of who we are essentially. We are divine. You check in with your soul 3 times a day. And then you can go and do your work. You can go and do your business. During the business, yes, you also have to remember that the soul is there to do good, to share a kind word, whatever it might be. But it's not as needy as people may think. But I think the more we allow the soul to also take center stage, not just the body, the more we will feel not just good about ourselves, as they say, but we will feel satisfied emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. You know, I'll mention him because I again saw his name here at the entrance of CBT. Bill Smith, and I remember asking him if I can tell this story. Even though he's no longer with us physically, I got his okay way before he died. So I'll share with you the story. But I remember Bill Smith, the way he was introduced here to CBT and to all of us. Bill Smith is the visionary of this building, who died before it was even built. But he was a big builder from Chicago, had moved here, and he built many buildings. And I'm sure those of you from Chicago know some of those buildings. But he came to us on Rosh Hashanah, and he tells the story, and I'm not going to go into all the details of how he parked his car. And then he said to himself, what, I'm coming to this is when we were in our storefront. He said to himself, well, I'm coming to this little dump. So he started putting his car in reverse. And for some reason, he said, you know what, if I'm here already, I'm going to go in for a few minutes. I'm going to get out of there. And he came in for not just a few minutes, he stayed. And then afterwards, we connected after Rosh Hashanah. And then during that first meeting between him and I, he started to cry. Now, this is a 62-year-old man, by all means, very successful in the American way, right? A lot of money, and he built himself a very nice career. And he, with tears in his eyes again, he says to me, Rabbi, I have to tell you that, and I've seen this happen, by the way, many times, not just with Bill Smith, but this is the Bill Smith story. I have to tell you that I thought that I would find happiness in all sorts of ways. First, in my business. I became very successful. I'm a millionaire, blah, blah, blah. I didn't find happiness there. So I went to the Far East and I traveled the world and I thought I would find happiness there. Didn't find happiness there. And I tried all sorts of other things and he didn't go into the details. He says, but I still didn't find happiness there. So the only place left to look at this age of 62 years old is God. Will you help me? And I said to him, look, I can hold your hand and we can explore this journey together. I don't know if I have all the answers. But to me, this was no doubt the shout of a soul that was ignored maybe in so many ways for so many years. And when, you know, thinking that the soul thinks that it's going to find happiness here and find happiness there, now it finds maybe glimmers of happiness, some drops of happiness here and there, but certainly not full self-satisfaction. And when we finally allow the soul, and I can't tell you how many times, you know, Bill Smith told me that this shift to God changed his life. And people saw it in him also. And he became such a soulful person that so in tune with doing good in the world and with refining himself. And he had a lot of enemies due to his very contentious business career. And he reached out to each and every one of them. I don't know if I shared the story, and maybe I did, but it's quite amazing. Before he died, I remember he sat down with me, made a list of 20 people that he had to ask for forgiveness from. Again, the call of his soul. He said, that's it. From now on, I'm paying attention to the soul. And he changed. Ask his wife. He was a changed man at the end of his life, completely. At his funeral, everyone said how changed he was, that he'd find finally satisfaction and he'd finally find his purpose and was able to live according to it. But after he reached each and every one of those 20 people, when he reached the very last one, a guy named Buzz Rottenberg, he said, sorry, Buzz forgave him. 2 weeks later, he died, almost as if he knew that he was dying. His soul knew because he was not paying attention to it. His soul knew. Soul knows when you come to this world and when you leave this world. He was so in tune with his soul that he said, okay, now it's time to make the list of 20 people. He reached the last one, and that was the end. But of his journey, at least in this world. But why am I telling you the story? A very moving story, at least from my perspective, is because there is a man who really was, quote unquote, successful, had the perfect resume, had the perfect life, but it was the most imperfect inwardly. And he finally said at the age of 62, I'm turning to God. I'm going to allow my soul to find some expression. And there he became a changed man. And he died with the greatest smile on his face. Because finally the soul was given attention. That's all. That's really all. And why am I saying this? Because speaking of Diana, speaking of the thirst of the soul, it's indeed a fundamental need, like thirst and water is a fundamental need of the body. And if we ignore it, it's not that we are going to die, but we are going to experience some type of spiritual death. And the sooner we pay attention to the soul that wants to do good, the soul that wants to pray, the soul that wants to connect, the soul that wants to make an impact, the soul that wants to live its purpose, its divine purpose in this world, the happier we'll be. And the more satisfied we'll be inwardly, emotionally, spiritually. That's just like thirst. But again, there are two sides of the soul, and that's what becomes tricky. And that's what we're going into now, the fire and the water. You have to know when to be in the fire side and when to be in the water side. Again, I believe that in our generation, we have, as hard as it could be, we have to be much more on the water side than on the fire side. Action is what is needed much more than emotion, which maybe are two things that represent really the two sides. Fire flies up like an emotion that flies up. Water, like Rabbi Stein says here, goes down like an action that goes down. So it's easier to go up, to fly into this ecstasy, to say Shema Israel and think of God's awesomeness. And it's harder to go down to a lower level of a person, lower level of an action. But that's what's needed of us most in our generation, I believe. And I think it's true for this coronavirus era, if I may add, because yes, we're enclosed in our homes, and we might say, okay, in our homes, what's left for our soul? Just the fireside. How much can we actually bring our water down, our water side of the soul down to this world? We're not in connection with this world. We're disconnected. We're in the confines of our home. And I would dare disagree. I think that's why God gave us technology. I think that's why God gave us all these tools today to be connected, even though we're seemingly disconnected. Don't let the illusion of disconnection disconnect you from being on your water side of the soul and doing good in this world. We can still make an impact from the confines of our home. Again, whether it's picking up their phone and reaching out to someone who needs a good word, or mending a relationship, or whether it's volunteering. There's so many volunteering opportunities that can be done today. Or whether it's maybe recalibrating yourself as you're at home and making a plan for the post-coronavirus era of how you can be more active, how you can connect more to the water side of your soul. Because again, I think that's Tzav HaSha'ah, as the Lubavitcher Rebbe put it, the call of the hour, to be down here, to bring heaven down to earth. All right. Any other comments, questions?
Beautiful.
Very, very nice.
Beautiful.
Okay. I'll add just one more thing. Go ahead. Yeah. Did anyone have anything else to say? No? I thought I heard something. I'll just add one more thing also. It's interesting, but the word for water in Hebrew, as you all know, is mayim. Now, mayim is an interesting word. It has many facets to it. But in this context, mayim is the word that has two mems and one yud in the middle. Now, Kabbalistically, mems really refer to action. If you look at the shape of the mem, I don't want to be too Kabbalistic here, but if you look at the shape of the mem, it's round with an opening. And the mem sofit is completely sealed. Now, the two mems of a year represent really our ability to take our body that may be sealed, and the Mem Sofit all of a sudden now is creating a crack in our body that faces the outside world. Now, how do you do that with the Yud that's inside the word mime? The Yud is the letter of God. It's one of the letters of God. How do you do that? By asking not what your body wants, but asking what God wants from you. When the more you ask what God wants from you, the more that crack in the Mem can open up yourself and allow the soul to reveal itself. So it's the Yud that must guide the Mem, just Kabbalistically. Whether you connect to this idea or not, what this is saying is that one of the ways really to allow souls to unleash themselves is simply by asking not what do I want today. You wake up in the morning, it's a question you have to ask, not what I want. Yes, I might have my plan and I should have a plan, I should have a schedule for the day. But I also have to ask, what does God want from me today? And it could be very different than what I want. And the more we ask what God wants from me today, the more I think we can connect to our soul. It's one question that creates that crack in the Mem and in us. And maybe that's one tool that we can also incorporate every day. What does God want from me? And then the soul will feel as if it's being given nutrition. It's being nourished as it's supposed to be. All right, friends.
Thank you,
We have
Rabbi.
to run into the other Zoom room now, but it's great to see you all. Shavuot